Thank you, Arcady, for organizing these events, and thank you, Sander, as well, because you did an awesome job getting all these people here. So I'm very excited for last session. I hope you all managed to stay awake. And creating sessions, especially for an event, can go two ways, but I don't have to explain that to you. But we're going to have some fun around AI, and we're going to look at AI versus humans, and not to make this anything off-putting or just to steer you away from AI, because AI is very cool. That is my stance, so let it be clear, I think AI is very cool. But we're going to explore some dilemmas and some aspects on the AI-human relation that can be challenging for the foreseeable future. Okay, I switched to OBS, so let me click once, and then it should click again. I am Roelant. I'm a cloud and AI architect, and as Sander said, since last Friday, I joined Synergie, which is a big French company that nobody knows here. In the Netherlands, they bought Ordina, which it used to be called Ordina in the Netherlands, and they bought it and they called it Synergie, and that's where I work now. But that's not really relevant. It's an awesome place, I think. I only been there for 3 days, so I'll let you know in time. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, Azure and AI, so both fields. Very happy about the AI part, but because usually I talk about AI. These sessions, I try to do as many as possible, are almost always about AI, and I tried Sander to get me to talking about Git, but he didn't want to. He still wanted me to talk about AI. I also love the community, so I love speaking here, but also love organizing stuff. So a little bit more to the south, in the center of the Netherlands, we organize a couple of events, like the Azure First Day, SDN Nights, and some in North as well. Last week we had DevNet North, where Michael was also talking. Awesome story. So if you ever want to publish an article or do a session or whatever, just look me up on the internet, on LinkedIn, and let me know so we can make that happen. All images in this presentation, or almost all images, are AI generated. So if you want to know the prompt or how these were generated, because some are pretty cool, if I say so myself, then come to me after the session. Let me take you back in time. About 8 years, it was Thursday, March 2016, March 24. And Peter Lee wakes up. It's just a peaceful morning. He has his morning coffee, he takes a shower. All is fine, he is enjoying his morning cup of coffee at the coffee table in the kitchen, and he gets a call from one of his engineers. And the engineer says, the only thing he says, "Sir, it's bad, it's really bad." And he hangs up the phone, he checks his email, and immediately starts working on an apology, a formal apology. Fortunately, thankfully not a letter of resignation, it was not that bad. But the next morning they issued a press release. And Peter is Vice President Healthcare at Microsoft. And this is what he, oh, this is not what he said. Let me scroll. Scrolling is hard. I wanted to print this out. That would have been such more dramatic, but he issued a press release. And the press release said, as many of you know by now, on Wednesday we launched a chatbot called Tay. And we are deeply sorry, this is the actual press release. We are deeply sorry for the unintended offensive and hurtful tweets from Tay, which do not represent who we are or what we stand for, nor how we design Tay. Tay is now offline, and we'll look to bring Tay back only when we are confident we can better anticipate malicious intent that conflicts with our principles and values. It was already 8 years ago. It was Microsoft releasing Tay, and some people who know the Tay story already started laughing because Tay really went rogue. It really had racial slurs, and in the past I actually also had tweets from Tay just derailing, but in the end, well, that's also me giving a platform to those slurs and to those opinions, and that should never be the case. And they promised to bring back Tay, and well, unfortunately they did that unintentionally a couple of days later when they re-released Tay, which was not the intended result. They were testing internally and it just got public again, and immediately she derailed again, because Tay was a chatbot that should be very friendly and should mimic the behavior of a 19-year-old girl, just happy on Twitter, because Twitter existed back then still. It was a happy place before Elon Musk. Well, Twitter was never a really happy place, but Tay was supposed to make it a bit more happy. Well, it went totally the other way. And she went rogue again. She started talking about drugs and promoting drug use. And then Microsoft actually pulled her blog. She was killed off, and she was never seen again. And she was replaced by Zoe. And Zoe was the most political correct chatbot there was, and there was no fun anymore. So Zoe did not live very long after that as well. But it's a very good example of how AI, and especially in the early days, could derail like crazy. And we all started blaming Microsoft for, well, why did you do this? And you could have seen this coming. But this is a learning experience. And it's very important to keep understanding that the phase we're in now, we're in the infancy of most AI and most large language models. This is something we're learning. So there is going to be mistakes and there are going to be setbacks. But it is a very powerful piece of technology, and it can empower humans, and there can be great synergy to call out Synergy for the first time. But it's also fun to look at the dark sides even more. You can also use these large language models or these models for hacking. And if you've ever seen a talk about Sami Lyle, who talks about the ransomware gangs, has anyone seen Sami? No, it's a really good speaker. If you ever get a chance, really attend one of the sessions, and he will explain how these ransomware gangs work, because these are very, very professional organizations that are very well organized, and as he states, have better customer service than the companies being attacked themselves. So if you order the ransomware, you just, well, it's not as easy as calling them up, but if you have their number, if you have their contact details, you call them up and you say, I want to attack this company. And they say, well, this will cost you 20,000 euros or something. I don't know about the prices, so I'm not advertising here as well, but just to give you a figure. And they work no cure, no pay as well. So if they're not getting breached, the other company, you don't have to pay anything. But AI is really empowering these kinds of organizations, and that, of course, that is sad. So we have to empower ourselves as well. So our security initiatives should also be powered by AI, because else this is a losing battle. They are going so fast, and they were already so well organized, and AI just makes them so much faster and better equipped. And they're not going to lay off people, they're just going to attack more companies. So it's a bigger and bigger problem. And I don't know about you, but for the past couple of months, I'm getting these really sophisticated phishing attacks in emails for people in my LinkedIn network emailing me with questions that are very legitimate. And they just look very real. And they use all this social engineering for all these social networks. And AI makes this really possible to really personalize these messages. So be vigilant about these things. Is there any other one that is really noticing a big increase in these social engineering attacks? You're all very safe here as well, so this is awesome. Yeah, this is Zwolle. Yeah, this is a safe haven for social engineering. This is very cool.
Or the end of the alphabet. Don't tell them.
At the end of the alphabet, yeah. In a couple of months, then Zwolle is being hit hard. Yeah, no, well, I hope that isn't the case. But it's not only these ransomware attacks. Of course, it's also being used. There's even AIs that can listen to your keystrokes and determine not exactly the password, but by listening, it can determine in what 2% of a brute forcing attack your password should be, because those were the keystrokes it was listening to. These kind of strange things are all powered by AI, and it's just mind-blowing, but it's very good to get a grasp on. And the next one is yet not another attempt to get you to be black hat hackers or just to go nuts with it. It's just to illustrate how easy this is. And this is a Hugging Face. Everyone know Hugging Face? A couple of people. It's a marketplace for models. So you can have all kinds of AI models. A lot of them are large language models. And you can just download them here. And usually these are free of charge. Some are open source. And this is a model that can help you do penetration testing. And it's very, very good. This is, if you install this model, you can chat like it, if it's ChatGPT, and you can ask it, how can I penetrate this company? How should I proceed? And it will give you all tips and hints how to do that. Of course, should be used for prevention. And they covered it because they put that in the disclaimer. So it's in the license and the disclaimer. You should not do anything wrong with it. So yeah, we won't probably, right? No, but it's
Downloaded 0 times.
It's done.
Nobody's using it.
Oh, last month, yeah. Well, that's a very good one. Maybe they just turned off the counter. But if you would have malicious intent, you wouldn't use this one. You would use one from the dark web, which is actually even more powerful and not as traceable as this one. Again, no tips here. It's just to illustrate how easy it is to get your hands on these pieces of technology. But there are all sorts of other problems as well. These are hacking attempts, and these are things that are almost sometimes pretty far from our scope, right? These are big companies being attacked. The companies are in fact getting smaller and smaller because they're attacking more companies. But as a person, usually, if you're not on Troy Hunt's Have I Been Pwned website, then you're usually okay. But of course, using AI and using machine learning, there are a lot of other problems as well. One of the biggest problems in using AI and machine learning is bias in the data sets. And that bias will lead to its targeting, and it is the AI, it's targeting different groups of people in a different way. So not everyone is equal to that AI. And of course, that is not okay. We want a kind of utopian society where everyone has the same chances and have the same access to these large language models and can use them in the same way. And if you do not treat everyone equal, some people will form some form of distrust to those models and either stop using them or do other things as well, but they're not having the same chances to use that. And when people are actually abandoning these AI systems, they reduce the collaborative, the synergy potential we have with these AIs to be more productive. And that would be a huge shame. Oh, scrolling is hard. But of course, there are some things we can do to remedy this. And the first one is well, it sounds as simple as just get the bias out of these data sets. But that's almost impossible. At the MVP Summit this year in March, Mark Rosinovich, the CDO of Azure, was asked kind of the same question, and I don't believe this is under NDA. I'm checking with, no, it shouldn't be. It's just a common question, so they'll sue me. But
let me record this.
No. Tina does not have to know. No. But Mark, or let's call him Bob, answered this in a very, very good way, because he said, well, these data sets are not perfect because the society that is creating these data sets is not perfect. There are deep-rooted bias is there in us. We have prejudice. That is very human. And we don't want to model that in the data set, but it's almost impossible to get out because there's so much data. It's years and years of wrongdoing. It's impossible to get it out, at least for now. So what we should do, and that's the second thing you should do, is to have some bias detection and some remedy in place. So let's detect the bias and let's have some system in place that can correct for it, that works. And that's what they're focusing a lot of attention on, and that is what we're, of course, seeing in those AI guidelines. If you use the LLMs in the playgrounds, you get, well, if you try to jailbreak, you get all these things of warnings and content policy violations if you try to steer it in the wrong direction. So they're actually doing a very good job in steering it. And for now, that is almost the only thing they can do, besides the third thing you can do, and that is the be very transparent. So be very transparent as what your models are doing, how they get their data, and how their reasoning is. And that is what we're seeing in the newest models. as a feature. We get to look at the reasoning, we get to see how it's getting to its answers, a lot more than we saw before. Before it was just a stream of tokens. We put in some query to ChatGPT and it just generated stuff. But more and more, thankfully, we see how it's getting these answers and how it's based on the data set. Let's talk about job security, because it was one of the questions, and there was some concern, and I think there should be concern. Because at the turn of the last century, so at the beginning of the 20th century, there were a lot of horse and carriage makers that were on top of the world. They were making great product. They had horse breeders, so they bred a lot of horses. There was a lot of money to be made there. Carriage makers produced a lot of carriages because people had to move stuff, they had to get around. But then came cars. And well, they said, well, those cars are crazy expensive. These cars are not reliable. These cars use fuel. It's much easier to feed those horses. But in the end, a couple of years later, when cars started being mass produced, there was a lot more demand for cars than there was for horse and carriages. And we're kind of in the same situation now, that we have this AI and we kind of can use it. It can make us more productive, but you also have a lot of examples that it's just hallucinating or just wrong, and people get discouraged. So they're kind of like the horse and carriage makers that think, well, is this going to blow over? Is this really for me? But I think in a couple of years' time, when the AI gets better, if you're not using it, then you probably will become one of those horse breeders or carriage makers that are becoming more and more obsolete. So it's not that you're going to be replaced by AIs, but you're going to be replaced by your coworkers that do use these AIs. And what's happening in a couple of years, I don't know, but for now, for the coming decades probably, we're totally fine because there's huge demand for IT personnel. There's so many people that can fill those vacancies in. So we don't have to worry about our jobs, but things are going to change. And it's fun that there's even more parallels to that example for the horse and carriage, for the cars. Because when cars came, of course, we put fuel in them. They were not very efficient engines, so we put a lot of fuel in them. So they were very polluting. If you look at these large language models, with all the energy they're consuming, they're very polluting as well. And when you get to have a car in the beginning of last century, it made you much more productive. You could travel faster and larger distances. And these LLMs can make us much more productive. So maybe there's more parallels than we're seeing. And I love this image because I asked for the horse and carriage and we put an AI in a robot form on top of it, but it actually gave it wheels. So it's crazy how AIs think. And it's crazy how they keep up with current events, because this was what he generated for fake news. And if you look closely, or not so closely, there is the next president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, it was because I asked for fake news. And this is the only thing I gave it to the model, to the prompt, fake news, and it generated this, which looks very artistic. It's very lovely. But fake news and also these deepfakes are, of course, also a huge problem with the current, not society, but with the current state of things, because these are being used for very bad things. We have a couple of examples of CEO fraud that they copied the voice of the CEO and just transferred money. Of course, there are a lot of actresses that had their faces swapped to other types of movies. And in the beginning that was not fine, but that you can totally see. And today the technology is so good and it's so widespread that everyone, and again, it's just not a tip, this is not a how-to, but it's very easy, it's very accessible just to do face swaps, just to do neural voices. You don't have to buy any hardware, you can just do it online. Again, no tips. But just to make people aware that this is out there and it's very easy. So be careful where you leave your data and your pictures. And all powered by this generative AI and the generative adversarial networks that kind of compete for the best result, which really helps in producing better and better images. But it also makes you wonder, and especially the pictures like these, is how can we distinguish what is actual art? Is this art? Because to me, if someone showed me this picture and did not tell me it was generated by AI, I could just believe that there was some artist creating this image. It looks very artistic. It looks thought out. It looks current eventy. It looks everything. But how can we distinguish this from real art? Is there someone that wants to add something? Is this something you struggle with that as well, Sander?
Well, they are working on things like adding AI, like metadata to images. So any image generated by AI has to be signed, and you can always look at the image saying this is an AI image, was generated by this model, etc.
Yeah, like kind of a digital watermark, not present in the picture itself, but in the metadata in the file itself.
Yeah.
So you can detect that it is, yeah. Yeah, that's also very easy to work around, because you can, if you could take a screenshot of this, then it's gone. So again, that is something being imposed by responsible AI, by guidelines. So it's a very good thing, but it's not foolproof yet. I want to ask, does anyone know who this is? But it's in the left top, so. To me, this is one of the greatest people of the 21st century, Alan Turing, which of course was famous, also famous by the Hollywood film movie about cracking the German Enigma machine, using his machine called the bomb. And that to me, that's incredible, because it's such a shame what happened to him in the end and how he was treated by his own government. But this man shortened the World War by a couple of years and saved millions and millions of lives. Nobody knew for like, 20 years ago that was the case. And he really was a thought leader, he was a great thinker, a philosopher, and really thought about machines already back then. And it was like the 1940s, 50s, right? Even before the official machine learning was thought of. He thought about machines and how they could think, but he also thought, well, how can we distinguish, how can we make a test? So that's the Turing test, that distinguishes between whether it is an artificial intelligence or a real human. So at that time, he thought, well, if we let people chat and don't let people or actors see each other, so there was one human just having a conversation with something or someone behind the curtain. It couldn't see it, it couldn't hear it, but it had to type. There was a screen and a keyboard back then. And the Turing test was, if you can determine as the person having that conversation, if it is an artificial intelligence or not, then if you can't determine it, and you can't determine it in 30% of the cases, then you pass the Turing test. And that actually took more than 60 years for an AI, and of course that is contested because people claimed they had beaten the Turing test, but the first widely accepted case was in 2014, I think, for a chatbot made by some Ukrainian guys, and was the first thing. That was the first thing passing the Turing test. But the sad thing is, the modern LLMs will have no trouble passing that Turing test. And of course, there are a lot of stupid things you can make LLMs say, but that it's such a powerful piece of technology, and I don't think you can distinguish it anymore. Especially the newer models like the GPT-4 and the O1 models, they are so good. Especially now that you can interrupt them as well, just in flight. And that really helps to have an actual and meaningful conversation. And a couple of weeks Scott Hanselman also came to the Netherlands. Was anyone there in Veldhoven? That's maybe too southerny for Zwolle. If you have at one point in time you have a chance to visit a session by Scott Hanselman, please do so. That is always great fun. You can never go wrong there. But he also talked about AI, and he strongly believes not to use AI for anything that is like creative and will hurt someone's job. So he's only using this for rubber ducking and just being inspired, and he's not using any creative part of it. And to me, that's mind-blowing, because I love creating these images night after night, especially when technology came out. This was my every night I was spending generating image after image, just going nuts with these. And that brings us to the general intelligence part, as I promised. Because for now, the I in AI is highly underrepresented, because there is no intelligence in these large language models. And they look so intelligent to us, and they give us almost intelligent answers, but there is no intelligence at all. And AI has surpassed humans in a lot of technologies and a lot of fields. It's very good at speech recognition and image recognition, better than humans. It can process natural language better than humans. It's weird to think of, but it is the case. And also for medical image diagnostics, planning systems, all these AIs outperform a human greatly. And there are still fields that humans reign, and those are kind of the murky fields, like ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning is very hard for an AI, because there is no definite boundaries to be given, so it has to try really hard. So no human parity there yet. The scientific research is hard for them as well, to think of new things, and much more. But AIs are closing in fast. But why am I saying there's no intelligence? Because it's all math. Everything behind the scene. That's why we need embedding models. Those embedding models that convert our words or our tokens. Well, just let's use words. That's easier to understand. They're converting these words in numbers, in large lists of floating point numbers. That's the only thing the embedding models do. And those are long lists, so those are high dimensional vectors, as they call it. And that can range from a couple of vectors, a couple of numbers, to 300 for the word-to-vec model we're going to look at. And even for the newest OpenAI models, it's 1536 and higher. And those tokens, those vectors, those floating point numbers capture the meaning of words. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip some good stuff. If you are into good stuff stories, we can do it during drinks. But there, of course, are a lot of good Synergy things to tell about AI and how it works together in the success stories. Two things I wanted to cover, and I think I'm just running just a couple of minutes late, but Sander's already on his phone, so it should be okay. He's not noticing at all. Because another aspect, and I touched upon it briefly for the horse and carriages, is the sustainability aspect, because this is costing a lot of power. And it's crazy amount of power, because this is really leaving a significant imprint on the world's energy consumption. Before we had crypto, that was crazy. This is even more crazy. And these are not ironclad statistics, and I'm pointing there, but there's nothing there. There's only a pretty picture there. But the GPT-4 models are trained. During training cycle, you have it being trained on 25,000 GPUs for 3 months, running constantly, 100%. And that costs roughly about 3.5 million kilowatt hours. So that's just one training cycle. You end up with a very good model, but it's very expensive. And that is an exhaust of 5 million kilograms of carbon dioxide. And that's not even the inference. All of us, all using these AIs, are burning away these tokens. And these tokens cost roughly, generally, 1.7 watt hours per 1,000 tokens. So you run into that fast. So it's a crazy amount of energy being consumed by these models. And again, these models are great, keep using them, but keep in your mind, maybe we can do with a smaller model, just using less energy and being more effective. And I'm not going to do the entire, I was planning to do this game with you. Do this game at home. The moral machine, it is very interesting what you will answer. Because at first it starts out very easy, You get to be the self-driving car, and you get to kill off either your occupants or the people walking on the crossover. And you have to make the choice. And these start out easy, they get very hard. And there's a very moral dilemma. And what is interesting on that moral dilemma is that that is culturally different. Different cultures have different opinions on what is the right thing to do for such a self-driving car. So you don't want to be a programmer at Tesla, having to program this in, but how can we figure this out then? So that's a very hard question to solve. And there's some interesting results. So you don't want to be a youngster in like the Asia region, because you're gonna be run over. Do this at home. It's very, well, it starts fun and then it gets confronting. Yeah, will this be the end? Well, it's definitely the end of my presentation, but will this be the end of us? Well, not for now. This is not now. This is, no, but it isn't. No, we'll be fine for years and decades to come.
Let's go. Computer says no.
The end. Thank you. If there are any questions, let's do it during drinks.